welcome everybody. And this is, just want to be sure that, we want to see why startups matter. One of the things is, why it matters is because you have no more prospects of jobs anymore, right? Either that, or you think you're too smart for everybody who's around you, right? So like I was working in a company, I was doing stuff and I had so many ideas all the time. And I kept going to the person that I was working with. Means, yes, I was just a 20-year-old startup person, from IIT Kanpur, and I had a million ideas. And my boss said, you should be an entrepreneur. You love to boss around. And I said, okay, that may be a path for me. So I think these wonderful entrepreneurs are also through there. So I would like to see, our IIT upbringing of engineering makes us like nerds. But it doesn't make us like, the ones who are out there taking risks and stuff and being out there with the people. Means on top of it, gupshup means talking. Working with chit-chat with people. That means you have to be around people. And then on top of it, you founded Elance. That is how freelance people work, right? It's such a cool thing, Elance, right? And you founded, first company you founded was Amerify?
Armedia.
Armedia, and then the coolest company, Jungly, right? So both of you have found companies. Yes, they were like 20 years ago, and they have been working through and through. And your company, first company was Armedia, second company, Jungly, that I remember. I don't know why, just because of the name probably. And that Amazon bought it, and then you started that company. You sold that company before you did Armedia, right? One company after the other. So I have a lot of questions, I think our audience too, about these things. First of all, what made you start a company, like instead of having a solid job, going home, enjoying the freedom, to toil 60 plus, 70 plus hours a week in your garage, in heat and whatever, to start a company. So I'd like to ask questions from both of you, but can I start with you, Beirut, first, as to what made you start Elance? I think that was your first company, right?
Yes, that's right.
Please go ahead and
Sure.
tell us.
Actually, you commented on something. I think most of us in this audience, like Indians, I think make natural entrepreneurs because growing up, at least in India, nothing around you works as expected. The trains, the buses don't run. The autos don't show up. It's a chaotic environment. And you have to, every day, you're taking risks, dealing with challenges and so on. And then when you think about startup life, it's more of the same. But you're not phased by it, and you kind of go to Singapore where everything works all the time precisely. And then they try to create entrepreneurs and say, how do you teach somebody to break rules, to do jugaad, to kind of deal with something that doesn't, your mental model is very different, right? So I think that's why if you at least Silicon Valley or even elsewhere, I think Desis do just fine. And then on top of it, you add the IIT hyper competition and cutthroat element of it. It just sort of, you're all set. We have that training just growing up where we did. But to your question about starting something, it was really, I think the mid-90s was an exciting time, birth of the internet and a lot of different possibilities. And I think so after MIT, I spent about 4 or 5 years on Wall Street, which in the beginning was very exciting and actually great experience in sort of business school-like experience, which was fun. But after some point, at least for me, it felt like, buy low, sell high, doesn't get that interesting. And I was really just excited about creating something that can impact lots of people, millions of lives, have impact. The cliche term, make a dent in the universe type thing.
What a
right?
noble idea. Just not for yourself?
Well, so I think, to me, Elance came about, it was sort of 3 experiences that fused sort of my own background. Right, coming from India, like all of us, we know that there are talented people all over the world. Having done computer science, which at that time, the impact that internet was having in connecting people all over, technology enabling people. And lastly, being on Wall Street, I saw that you could create marketplaces for even illiquid products like services that we were doing, right? Like freelance design services and so on. So you combine all those 3 ideas, and that's how Elance came out.
Wow. Rakesh, would you like to tell us a little bit about, the gazillion ideas that you have, and 2 of them became the first companies you started?
Okay, so actually let me also start from, I think Indians, like Birut says, are native entrepreneurs. right?
जुगाड़ करना पड़ता है.
Jugaad karna padta hai. The point is absolutely right. Nothing works. So my first job was at Intel, and I had really no idea that I'd be an entrepreneur or any idea at all. Yeah. So, but I think being in Silicon Valley, where so much is around, I mean, it's I think a friend of mine described it best. It's hard to be in Las Vegas and stay away from the tables. Yeah.
Right.
So I think amongst other companies at Junglee, the internet was on us in a big way, and it was like, what do you do with this thing, right? So, good friend of mine, Ashish Gupta, who I know because his wife and my wife were at IIT Kanpur together, showed me something some evening where they were looking at ways to get an apartment. So he and Venki Anand, my Junglee co-founders, they built this thing on the web where you could basically fill out a form and say, you wanted an apartment with 2 bedrooms and whatever. So it was so hard to actually go and find that apartment by looking at the back of San Jose Mercury News or whatever, right? That it seemed, and there was no Google, okay?
Pre-Google days? I cannot imagine those. Right, sorry.
The verb hadn't happened. So it was Alta Vista and all those types of things, right? So it was there was no way to do things like this, right? So we first turned our attention in Junglee to jobs, where we found that classified advertising for newspapers was, I think at that time, $50 billion of revenue, and the majority of that was from job listings. So anyway, so we used that technology and we started aggregating products and so forth. So.
Interesting. So coming back, those are the technical aspects of why you started. But like personally, why would somebody, why startups are important? Why one starts a startups? Yes, Indians are natural entrepreneurs and a lot of Americans are, because things are not working here these days either. So this is a good time to start startups.
I'll give you my quick take, right? So between my wife and I, she was at MIT, postdocing. We decided we'd come to Silicon Valley and come back to Silicon Valley, actually, and for me. And when we moved back to Silicon Valley, we decided that she would be the meal ticket, and I'd be the lottery ticket. So we set it up so that I was free to go fail, which is the currency.
So one thing important, always have a spouse. I won't say a wife, a spouse who'll be the meal ticket, okay? Except that in my case, I was the spouse with the meal ticket earlier. But then, once my husband made it big, I made him the meal ticket, and I started mine. But you're right. What about you in your case? Was there a meal ticket?
Exactly, same thing. My wife's the dentist, and she was the meal ticket, it was the lottery ticket.
So
professional meal ticket, actually.
Exactly.
So what they're saying, that all of us are entrepreneurs as long as we have a safety net behind us. Right? So that's an important thing.
I think we're fake entrepreneurs that way. I think if you're a real entrepreneur, there's no safety net.
Okay. But it is like, following your passion, getting things done, right? So what is it that keeps you moving? Like for the last 20 years, you've done many companies. I love Elance because it's given a forum to people who are, I also use Elance. It's like you want to find somebody right away just to do a short job, and people are good, you see, and you find them. And you're willing to pay a slightly higher fee if you need to just because of that. And I love the name Elance. And please don't get me wrong, I love the name outsourcing desk too. But when you both combined and made it Upwork, what does that mean?
I know. Well, that's when you hire a marketing, sort of a VP of marketing who does focus groups and so on. It came out that way. So, but I have some, talking about the Elance story, I think something that the audience might relate to. I have some photos or slides, if you can just show that, the personal element of it. Do you have that?
Yes, Ashish.
Okay,
Where
there
are
you go.
the?
No, it's there. Yeah, so if we can just, so these are, we are in LA, right? So in Hollywood movie style, I have the beginning and the end, and the middle will talk about it, the plot twist and so on. But we started Elance like literally in a 2-bedroom apartment in New York, actually, across the river from New York City. And incidentally, one of my friends who was here at USC he joined, I mean, he was my co-founder. He moved out to New York, and we needed a place for him to stay, and we needed an office, so we made the 2-bedroom apartment, which at night was his bedroom, and in the daytime was the office. And then here's like, over like the next 8-9 months, it grew to about 15-20 people, still cramped in that same 2-bedroom office, makeshift, just squeezing in, huddling in there. And this was sort of the whole team. And then at some point, right, we went out fundraising. In fact, I should mention Rakesh here was one of our earliest angel investors. And we had about 8 or 10 other investors that helped us get going. And for funding, we had come out to Silicon Valley, like Kleiner Perkins invested in us. And at that point, the whole company, lock, stock, and barrel, we moved out west. And at that time, we didn't have a product yet to talk about or to do a lot of PR around. So the move itself actually became a big PR story. And we, I think with the help of a PR firm, we were very creative. And so, I mean, our logo was orange, so we were wearing orange T-shirts, but we handed it out to all the passengers in the flight as well, so that when the plane landed, it felt like there were about, it was a much bigger company than anybody thought, and we were
Awesome.
and we were met by like 4 or 5 news reporters and TV cameras and so on, because this was in the late 90s, 99 actually, right? So this became the stereotypical story of the new gold rush and people sort of coming back to Silicon Valley from all over the country, kind of thing.
Second entrepreneurial wisdom here.
Yeah.
Look bigger than you are,
Exactly.
and you will be.
You kind of fake it. Now, this was pre-9/11, right? So we could do things like hand out T-shirts, get everybody to stand up and do stuff. So it worked out really, really great. And then we moved into this office in Sunnyvale, which was so empty and so on. We'd play soccer and have a lot of fun, a lot of energy. And this was like literally that first check. That's a $12 million venture check in December of '99 when we moved out, out west. And I think, now between that and sort of the ending of the story about a month ago, and I have some photos of that too, but in a way, Elance was a little late to the booming '90s. We survived the financial meltdowns in 2001 and 2008, lots of ups and downs. We pivoted to, sort of enterprise software and back. We outlasted competition, many of whom had raised much more money than we had. Iterated through a bunch of business models. We had challenges around disintermediation. I mean, freelancers would connect and then take the business offline, which means Elance would not monetize. So we had to build in a lot of tools and value-added stuff like, payments and invoicing and workspace and so on. So we did all of that. And ultimately, right, the company grew. All the work that Elance did, essentially we pioneered the gig economy as we know it now, which has impacted many more industries, right? Even companies like Uber and DoorDash and Postmates and so on are all sort of descendants of the gig economy, if you will. So it's continued to grow. And finally, a month ago, so Elance merged with its top competitor, Odesk, and the two of them rebranded to Upwork, even though Smita doesn't like it. I mean, it worked fine.
It's just that we love the Elance name.
Right. So I came up, I love it too, right? So, but I think a month ago we had a big IPO, and these are some of the founders and so on, and they, light up Times Square. I mean, it's a bit of the ceremony itself is a bit of a marketing gimmick, but for you, for us, it's been a 20-year-long journey. And it's very meaningful, all the sort of blood, sweat, and tears and all the ups and downs and near-death experiences that you've lived through to finally come to this place. So, I think that's the Elance movie there. Yeah.
So that brings a couple of questions. Congratulations on this IPO. Not every company results in an IPO. Like, I've sold my companies, much, much, much less, but still, like, in the millions of dollars, but it's like a $1 billion IPO and stuff. We didn't start with that goal. Like, neither did you. I think you wanted to make something good for everybody and your companies also. So what is the goal that you start with when you do this, when you start a company?
I think, honestly, you don't start with a financial objective in mind. I don't think you can build a company that way, right? Now, of course, we wanted it to be huge, right? Because, look, it's hard enough to do a small idea or a big idea. So it might as well be a big, ambitious idea. And you want it to be a big, sustainable business that can scale, that can monetize. And if you take care of that, then the financial outcomes are good, right? So this wasn't the goal. And anyway, it's still just a milestone. But really, what you want to do is something that can impact a lot of people, that can, something that first has product market fit, even like would one person use it, would 1,000 people use it, and then eventually would millions of people use it as well. Now, of course, it turned out to be very a noble thing, as you said. But I mean, to be honest, it wasn't. I didn't start it out of charity either. Though the funny thing, the paradoxical thing is, for-profit businesses can do much more charitable work sometimes, right? In fact, the most gratifying experience I had, I remember I was visiting the Philippines where the IT minister bumped into me, and she was very excited about, I was the founder of Elance, and she's like, look, even the official sort of poverty alleviation scheme there is to train people and then put them on Elance or Upwork. Because Philippines are like 3,000 islands. They can't have manufacturing jobs and infrastructure factories and so on. It has to be virtual and remote. So it brings in about $250 million worth in foreign exchange, but it gives livelihoods to lots and lots of people around the world in a way that they'd never have been able to do. Now, of course, the company also monetizes, takes a small cut, and so on. So it's become a really big thing. So yeah, that's actually bonus in a way, right? I mean, you see that there's an economic arbitrage, right? The fact that there are talented people here, but the cost of living is lower. They could do it much cheaper than expensive places like LA or New York. And if you match it, I mean, it was sort of an arbitrage play, but that's how businesses are. I mean, they create so much economic value for all the stakeholders, and it's great. Yeah.
Thanks, Birut. And Rakesh, would you like to comment on it? You've started 9 companies, invested in many more companies.
Yeah, so I think, you're trying to build a big company, and you should just know in the back of your head that if you build a big company, these type of things happen, right? So I think for me, it's the excitement of the idea, right? Because you've got to really, nobody's given you a playbook. There may be some products similar, but there really doesn't exist any, and yet you've got to feel so crazily passionate about that thing that you're going to come to, you're going to do what Biru did, invite.
All the people to
we
wear
didn't,
the shirts.
we didn't see his wife anywhere in that 2-bedroom apartment.
That wasn't my apartment.
Elance is also the son of Jungli, by the way.
Aha.
All the Jungli founders are investors. We had the benefit of probably a 4-year head start. So we got 2 companies, one to Broadcom and one to Amazon. And then when Biru started this, in some peculiar way, timing is well, not in a peculiar way, but you can't control that. So, but I think what Biru is demonstrating, we're very proud of him, is 20 years, right? That's a holding period.
So you get dips in the middle, right?
Yeah.
So an entrepreneurship journey is not all rosy, like everybody knows. It's you start with a big passion, you have certain ideas, you make a roadmap of what to do, and then you have to pivot because some other competition comes up with some weird idea that sort of starts taking, and you have to come up with new ideas. And the entrepreneurship grit and passion is that you keep doing that. Then the second thing that happens is that you have that, these people are for sure my clients. And boom, you go to them and they say, we'll think of you in 5 years, Yeah. You won't be around in 5 years, you think. How do you deal with those kind of dips? I think our entrepreneurs would like to know, like with you both being so successful and being, at it for 20 years. Could you, like Rakesh first you, and then Birut could share a little bit about that?
So I think what you're asking about is product market fit, right? So I think I would say if you're trying to build a product and somebody says that you have 3 months of funding and you're going to get a customer in 5 years, you better find a customer sooner than that, right? So, and I think my realization is that you don't actually need to do, if you're building something for an audience, and even before you build it, if you don't have to show it to hundreds of people, but if you see 10 people that represent a class, and you can see a pattern emerging, right? So that.
Yeah, but how do you keep up with the dips in there? Like now, like now you're feeling, oh my God, I developed all this. I'm putting myself on the line.
Yeah.
And you have to keep your passion up.
Yeah.
And you have to pivot.
Yeah.
And as an entrepreneur, you do that.
Yeah. So
But
I
what
think
is that?
I think to me the secret sauce, if there is a secret sauce, is irrational optimism.
Aha! The most important is irrational optimism.
Because there's always 99% of the people are going to tell you it's a bad idea.
So you don't quit and you don't get out.
But I think the end user your whatever projected end user should be telling you it's a good idea.
Right.
Otherwise, there's also life is actually pretty short, right? So it's no sense in just.
But sometimes you do have to get out because.
Oh yeah, it's a good idea to also to fail fast as we say, right?
Fail early, fail fast.
Fail fast, but better not fail. So it's good to do as much upfront work as you can, test it out. Also have someone to bounce ideas off of. I find for me anyway, co-founders are fabulous.
Co-founders as well as like the people who have made it, like TiE as an organization. This is a plug for TiE. Is an organization is available with all of mentors who can help you. But yes, Birud, what is your?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, look, startups invariably, they're new businesses. Nobody in the world has ever done it. There's no playbook, as you're saying, which means you're inevitably going to face things that don't work. You could label it failure, if you will, but you try something, it doesn't work, and there's no formula, right? So I think there's there's a nice book called Grit, and that best paraphrases how, what it takes to succeed oftentimes, but really passion, perseverance, taking, like you said, the optimism, saying, okay, if this didn't work, it doesn't matter that it didn't, but why did it not work, and what can I do? How do I switch it around, turn it around? Innovation almost always works. Maturity is another thing that entrepreneurship certainly leads to, you need to mature very, very rapidly. There's a lot of, because it's not just a personal thing, it's also a team thing, right? When you're pivoting, it's easy to say, okay, I'll try something different. But when you have 20 or 50 other smart people in the room, each of whom has a different idea of how to pivot, it's really getting them to sort of do it together. So the whole personal equation is challenging. Then let's say you have to sometimes fire people, let people go. Even there, having a perspective that relationships are not transactional, but sort of longer term. And sometimes if you deal with it with maturity, I've had people actually come back and join us maybe a year later when circumstances change, right? So it's not you're fired and that's the end of it, but look, in this, it doesn't make sense to continue. And even just, our story, the two of us, he was an angel investor in Elance, but then he and I co-founded Gupshup together, and he's had many, so just that life, it's a marathon, and relationships will happen, and circumstances.
You should ask Biru to tell you all the pivots. Biru, what are the pivots
I know.
at Weberu?
Yeah, exactly.
I think the thing is we had funding. We had a lot of funding, so we could do these things. But you should talk about the Weberu pivots.
Right. Exactly. I think it helps to have a little bit of a runway, but once you have that and you keep going, and actually investors do support and reward that as well. But I think initially we started with sort of an offline web product, and that didn't work. But we said mobile and mobile messaging was exploding, and now it's become a really huge business, and hopefully this will have a similar outcome as the previous company as well. But I think it takes
So that brings me to two questions. You said that investors now. When you are in a dip, for example, or when you're pivoting, and at that time the investors may not like it. So first of all, if you've already succeeded like you did with Jungly and the others, and you had the money, and you also succeeded, Elance was doing well, why would you take investor money at that time instead of putting your own money? First, because it means, because I would think that would allow you to pivot, and a lot of our entrepreneurs would also think that. That's the first question. And second thing that you said about firing people. Like, 4 co-founders started the company, and one of them outperforms, and the other one is like, as the company's going, is lazing down. How do you fire the co-founder? What do you do? These two questions, and then I think we'll open it to the questions to the audience if you can answer those in a short
one question is, why don't you just keep on using your own money, right?
Why don't you? Means why do you want to go to the investor then?
And the second is firing, right? So I think it's scalability, right? So you want to own enough of the company, so through your founder stock and potentially investing in the seed or Series A rounds, you've done that. But if your company is going to need to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, then the business plan is probably become Jeff Bezos and then go do that. But I'm just saying that it's good to have wide participation from an investor base that can keep supporting you, investing in you as you scale. Plus, when you've got other people with skin in the game, then it's not just, investors actually don't drink your Kool-Aid. They support you, but you can very easily convert your whole 100% company into people that are just drinking your Kool-Aid, right? So at least you get, through board meetings, you get an opportunity, and they can be tough. I would say it's welcome toughness, right?
So you bounce the ideas with them, what they've known, what their works and stuff, so. Okay.
So that's one. I'll let Biro talk about firing.
Yeah. All right,
Okay,
you're fine.
now we understand.
From this panel. No, actually, just a quick analogy on the previous question of why to bring other people in, right? Yeah, okay, very quickly. Doing a startup in a way is trying to climb a mountain in the dark, maybe blindfolded, that doesn't matter, it's dark, right? And you wouldn't do that alone. You wouldn't say, okay, I'm just going to go, right? The ideal thing would be to hold a few hands so that you can cover more terrain. Different people can try different things, but take care of each other if somebody falls, stumbles, and so on, right? And that's the point, really. I think because it's unknown territory, nobody has an idea, nobody has done it before. So if you have stakeholders, and especially knowledgeable, intelligent, experienced people, doesn't mean they're right, but at least you have more perspectives, and nobody has a monopoly on just the one perspective, right? So it's really hard to completely go alone. I mean, it helps. And that's why these networks are massive. I mean, that's why, the magic about Silicon Valley actually is the networks, right? It's not the place, nothing special about the place, but the relationships and so on. And I think on the firing thing, I mean, I really just said you have to, people are, when I was a rookie entrepreneur, it was a lot harder, but over the years, I've just developed a lot of maturity around it. And in fact, the best thing you can do is really just be honest, right? Because there are certain factors that led you to this decision. And if you just told the person, very likely they might even agree, and might also agree that it's not the best fit to continue in this format or relationship. Either they're not a good fit for this, maybe they can find something that's better for them, or the company is struggling, it's a difficult time, or you need to change course, and that's why you're doing it. And it's not, the key is to depersonalize it. It's never personal. There is a context in which people come together and people split apart, and we might come back together again, right? So the best way is, when you handle it that way, I think these relationships can survive the twists and turns and so on, right? And I think that's the way to do it.
Thank you, thank you. So we'll take a couple of questions, if there are, and otherwise you guys will be available for a little while for people to answer questions. So, oh yes, I have one question, is who do you think out of the three of us appeared as the cover of Upside magazine in a cocktail dress? Anybody anybody can guess? Is it Beirut? Is it Rakesh? Or is it me?
It would have to be you.
It'd have to be
Aha. I didn't know. How many people think it's me? Okay, how many people think it's Beirut?
Definitely not.
How many people think it's Rakesh? Wow, it's like equal. Okay, let me show you. It's the Upside magazine from 1999, and it's Rakesh, he gets the cake. He was the controversial person at that time. Jungli had just sold to Amazon. Do you want to just tell us 2 minutes about it?
Okay, so basically we had a very aggressive PR person, Abby Patterson. Beirut would know Abby. So there was this woman called Katrina Garnett, who had run a company called Crossworlds, and she'd spent $1 million of venture money, and that was a lot of money at that time. It still is a lot of money, on this campaign where she was in this beautiful dress, and it was like, like a Playboy pin-up type of thing with different questions, and my PR people are all in arms, right? It's like taking women backwards so far, right? To have an ad like that. So anyway, so we were in the shopping business, okay, by that time. We were doing comparison shopping, and you could actually say whatever you wanted to buy, like a shopping search engine, which Google might be now. But this is 1998. Right. So this was before there was any Amazon in our lives, right? So I said, okay, as long as I can buy a dress and earrings and whatever the thing is on Jungly. So we used the Jungly shopping guides and put this thing together. And then they very quickly got Upside magazine and a few people interested. So I did that. So
Tell them what Bezos said.
okay, so shortly after that, unrelated, we got an inbound call from Randy Tinsley, who ran Corp Dev at Amazon. They wanted to buy our company. So then
Oh, was it your dress?
no, it wasn't. The dress was unrelated.
It was related. Well,
This was kind of sort of related. So the day I flew up to see Jeff Bezos for the first time, in the or maybe the second time, somewhere there, early days, I got into the Alaska Airlines flight from San Jose, and I spilled coffee on my white shirt because the front page of the Wall Street Journal and the marketplace section was this picture, me in a dress. And I said, Abby, when I come back, I'm going to kill you and fire you. Because I had no idea what Jeff Bezos is going to say. And of course, Jeff walks into this conference room and puts down the Wall Street Journal, the same thing, looks at me. He's a stand-up comedian, actually. So he puts it down, looks at me, stares at me and says, So he says, okay, one thing I got to tell you, Rakesh, let's just get the air clear. Any CEO that's willing to get into a dress to promote his company, I want to get into bed with that guy. So they paid $250 million for that dress.
So be out there. Okay, Joe? So one of the big things about entrepreneurs, wisdom is just be out there. Do whatever you want. And it may work out.
May work out.
I was going to say it will work out. No, it may work out. Okay, so if you have questions, we can take two, and then after that, we will move on.
Thanks for the wonderful chat. My question is to both of you. How do you guys take decisions under uncertainty? You guys have a lot of experience interviewing times and revolutions. A lot of uncertainty in the business. How do you take decisions?
I think you listen to as many people as you can, and then when you're done, and I think you've got to be as analytical as possible, but then decisions have an expiration date, right? So you can't not take a decision either. Yeah? So then whoever it is that's the, you want the decisions to be made as low in an organization as possible. So you don't want the CEO to be making decisions about which he doesn't know. But when it's your role as a CEO to make a decision, you've got to be as analytical, talk to as many people as you can, and realize that the clock is ticking. So at some point, you're going to make a call.
Yeah, I think sometimes I found, again, right, because of uncertainty, you can do trial and error. You can do little smaller experiments or take smaller bets before you double down on something, right? Those are you can do breadth first or depth first. I mean, there's different ways to approach it as well. But those are all ways to reduce the risk of being wrong, right? What you don't want to do is not get killed by something you didn't know and just, sort of be completely wrong. But there's many ways to reduce that risk, yeah.
Thank you. We try to, if you don't mind, if
Sure.
you guys, then we will get our next set going as well. Big hand.
Thank you.
Noreen, can we have a quick picture on this stage with these wonderful entrepreneurs? I'm sorry he's not in his cocktail dress, but
I'm not.